as I mentioned, is one of the lead sponsors of the bill. Senator, thank you so much for your time. So it is a big deal, as Jacob was just mentioning, but this is the third big attempt in the past 15 years to act on immigration reform in this country. As you very well know, previous efforts in 2007 failed, 2013 failed. What is different this time around that makes you think it will get passed?
Well, thank you for having me with you. Look, in 2013, I was part of the Gang of Eight that passed comprehensive immigration reform, said it couldn't be done with 68 votes in the Senate. Unfortunately, it died in the House of Representatives, where then Speaker Boehner never even gave it a vote. Had it, it would have passed, and we'd be talking about a whole different dynamic in our country today. So what's different is we have a president, and President Biden, who has leaned into this. The legislation that I introduced today, and Congresswoman Linda Sanchez has introduced in the House, is basically the legislation that President Biden envisioned as what we would think about in terms of finally dealing with comprehensively the question of immigration reform. So we have a president who's leaning into it. We do have a majority in the House of Representatives, and they moved certain elements of this bill in the last Congress. And then we have a narrow majority in the Senate, but it gives us three legs of a stool to finally try to make this happen. And I'm looking forward to working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle to achieve it.
Senator, let me bring in Jacob Soboroff, who has some questions for you on this as well. Jacob?
Senator, it's good to see you. I wanted to ask you about the smarter enforcement piece of all of this. I think that most Americans became familiar with the conditions migrants are held in during the family separation crisis. They saw the children kept in cages. But the reality, as you know, is that facility was built during the Obama administration. Deterrence has been a decades-long policy of the U.S. government, both Democratic and Republican. This bill does not repeal 1325, the law that allowed the zero-tolerance policy to separate families. It does not end detention of any kind for immigrants. So where is it a departure in terms of what you call smarter enforcement?
Well, in several ways. Number one is we deal with root causes, which has not been dealt with in the past. When President Trump eliminated all of the assistance that we had built into Central America, he eliminated the ability to stop the root causes of why people flee. I mean, if you're in Central America and you're a parent and your choice is to stay and see a member of your family die, or see your son forcibly put into a gang, or your daughter raped, you're going to flee. And that's the reality that we have been facing. This plan calls for a 4-year investment into Central America, assuming they meet standards on the whole rule of law, on dealing with corruption, and dealing, of course, with the root causes of what drives people. That's one big difference. The other big difference is that we also give people a safe and legal process to apply for their immigration potential, whether it be on asylum status or some other status of the law, in country, so that we don't have them fleeing and taking the dangerous trek up north and coming to our border. And then it deals with how do people get dealt with once they may show up at the border and be able to make their claims for asylum. Some will be rejected and others will be approved, but that's totally different than what we had from the present administration.
When it comes to root causes, those hundreds of billions over 4 years is certainly a significant investment. It's not just, as you know, persecution and violence driving people to flee. It's also poverty and starvation and malnutrition, largely caused by climate change and climate variability. And I did see in the bill there's mitigation efforts for natural disasters. I didn't see climate change specifically mentioned in this bill. I know it's a priority for the administration. Is there a reason climate change as a driving factor is not a part of this bill, or how will climate change be dealt with?
Well, in the provisions on the Central America 4-year plan, it takes off of what the head of Southern Command said, that the hurricanes that had ravaged Central America was also a big driver of why people were fleeing, because of the economic and other dire circumstances they found themselves in addition to the ones that I just talked about. So part of that fund is to help rebuild in those communities, the economic basis, as well as the citizen security basis as well. In that respect, while it may not specifically mention it as climate, because this is, after all, an immigration bill, the bottom line is that it will take into effect in that Central American plan some of the challenges posed by climate change.
Senator, allow me to ask a question about
Thanks, Senator. Eamon, I'm going to throw it back to you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Thanks, Jacob. I was just going to pick up on a point that you raised, Jacob, which is about the politics of this, Senator. It's not clear that everybody in your party is on board with this right now. In fact, Texas Democratic Congressman, I'm sure you're aware of, Vicente Gonzalez, who represents a border district, told Politico, the way we are doing it right now is catastrophic and is a recipe for disaster in the middle of a pandemic. He went on to say, if we go off the rails, it's going to be bad for us. Biden is going to be dealing with a minority in Congress if he continues down some of these paths. What do you tell people like Congressman Gonzalez who are concerned about this effort that will ease their concerns and bring them on board to yours?
Well, look, first of all, we significantly deal with border communities in this legislation to address some of the unique challenges that border communities have. But unless we change the dynamics of, first of all, the root causes, the push and pull factors, unless we deal with a process to normalize and regularize our immigration system, unless we deal with the 11 million who are in the country undocumented and find a way to have them make themselves right with the law, these challenges will only exacerbate themselves. So I would say, while the legislation is comprehensive, it's our vision of what we would like to achieve in immigration reform, but we're going to be looking at what can we get done, how robustly we can make different elements of the legislation happen. And we'll certainly be reaching out to our colleagues on both sides in the aisle, and especially border communities, so they understand what is in the legislation that actually helps them most specifically on the front lines.
All right, Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey, Jacob Soboroff, thank you both, and certainly have invites to both of you to come back at any time to discuss this very important subject matter. Thank you.